very interesting following Angry Joe for the past couple of days. I feel like a lot of people are hyper fixating on the Supergirl thing. And of course, that is something worth talking about. Of course, Joe has this like huge fixation on DC, particularly Superman, and is just obsessed with this idea of like defending Superman at all costs. You know, he was like one of the only people who defended Man of Steel. He's someone who will like worship anything that has that like giant S on it. It's like, it's embarrassing, it's cringe, it needs to get called out. Angry Joe is one of the worst comic book reviewers, or comic book movie reviewers on the platform for this reason. Okay, if someone is going to come out and try and tell you that Man of Steel is good, you're going to have a problem with that. Okay, this is someone who will glaze anything DC does and defend everything they do, essentially. So, obviously, people are going to talk about his, like, rabid defense of Supergirl and how it goes against, like, you know, the overwhelming consensus that it's a complete disaster and, like, this awful movie that nobody should ever see. Like, again, props to all of you who are talking about that. But what I find more interesting is how he handled the Grand Theft Auto 6 situation. Okay, because I think this has gone under the radar, and I think this is something that, like, a lot of people aren't talking about, because I think most people, you know, most creators came out and said immediately that, like, the $100 was ridiculous, that Grand Theft Auto is way overpriced, that it's not worth that much, that something like Mario Kart or Fire Emblem Fortune's Weave, they add way more value at $80 than Grand Theft Auto 6 ever will at $100. People are pointing that out. They're addressing it. They're bringing out like the reality of the situation. Like Joe, on the other hand, is he is telling people that Grand Theft Auto 6 being $100 is a perfectly reasonable price point. Like, he is trying to tell you, he's trying to do the Shill thing, where he's trying to say that, like, well, the game is so big, and it has, like, 7,000 people working on it, and it has $1 billion budget, like, they need to have the higher price point, guys. Like, he is downright coming out, advocating for the prices to go up. And keep in mind, this is, like, one of those guys who came out and tried to say that, like, Mario Kart World was too expensive at, like, the standard price of $80. That the Switch 2 was too expensive at $450. And meanwhile, he said nothing about the rising PlayStation and Xbox costs. He said nothing about the rising PC costs. He said nothing about the Steam machine costs, while he's sitting there doing damage control for Grand Theft Auto 6. It's I think it's very telling where we're at now when it comes to, like, a lot of these big influencers, is that they are trying very, very hard to normalize these kinds of things. Angry Joe is indeed a sellout and has been for a long time. You know, it's remarkable how when, like, you look at his background, okay, you know, how much he glazes The Witcher, for example. CD Projekt Red flew him out there, wined and dined him, put his voice in the game, you know, in a brief cameo appearance, and, you know, he gave the game a 10 out of 10, right? Like, Angry Joe used his platform to shill for The Witcher and is partly responsible for why so many, like, deranged 40-year-old men believe The Witcher is the greatest thing to ever happen to open-world RPGs. It's because Angry Joe and influencers like him gaslight people into thinking this was some cutting-edge experience that was far beyond anything else the industry could offer. And then, meanwhile, in reality, Breath of the Wild came out a couple of years later and completely surpassed it. Okay, like, it's the difference in quality between those two things is vast. It is like an entire ocean's worth of quality. Like, Breath of the Wild is on such a higher level than Witcher 3, it's not even really worth talking about The Witcher 3 anymore. But because The Witcher 3 is the brand that works with Joe, that flies him out to Poland, that hooks him up with swag, who, like, partners with him, that's going to be the brand that Angry Joe sticks with. That's going to be the one he promotes. That's going to be the one he shills. even though he has come out and admitted that he's never actually done all of the DLC in The Witcher 3. He legit, did a reaction to that, like, expansion they announced, the new one for The Witcher 3, and he legit goes like, "Oh yeah, I never finished the last one, but I'm super excited for this." Like, it just comes off as incredibly inauthentic. Okay? And it's so transparent. It's so fake. And I really wonder, like, how long this can go on before people see through it. Like, this most recent Supergirl controversy, I think, is just one example of just how out of touch Joe is, in which he will defend the products he's meant to shill religiously while just not having his finger on the pulse of, like, what his audience actually wants. It's kind of gone beyond being like a bad YouTube reviewer at this point. It's gone beyond simply being like, this guy, like, who just talks about movie and games. Like, this guy will do everything he possibly can to defend his favorite brands, to keep the narrative towards them positive, and to keep the attention on his channel, to keep the money flowing in, to keep being a sellout, and to keep doing what he's doing. And it's not something that we should tolerate anymore. Like, this was a positively disgusting thing to see happen, right? It was baffling how everybody, like, bent over backwards to try and damage control for Joe and make him out to be as if he was doing something great. How many people came out and tried to say that, like, Grand Theft Auto 6 is going to be this masterpiece, the biggest entertainment property ever, people are saying now, which is not true. Pokemon's way better, way bigger. Grand Theft Auto 6 is going to be a complete disaster, okay? We've seen evidence of that already. The price point alone, I think, indicates that this is going to be a mess. But Angry Joe will not admit it. Angry Joe is bending over backwards trying to tell people that this is a perfectly reasonable price point. After spending his entire career trying to promote himself as, like, the consumer-friendly, anti-journalist, anti-establishment gaming YouTuber. Like, he did everything he possibly could to try and damage control Grand Theft Auto 6. And it's something that we really are going to have to talk about going into, like, launch cycle. Like, this is a real problem in that people like Joe are going to do everything they can to brush everything wrong with Grand Theft Auto 6 under the rug in order to continue their grift. This is going to be the reality of the gaming community going forward. It's all shills and no actual substance.